Welcome to the Sports Cypher, brought to you by Gas Sports Network. I'm your host, Scruff Lion, a.k.a. Nick Valsound, Good Ass Sports. I'm here in the Lions Den, ready to dive in some of the hottest sports topics right now. I'm here with one of my favorite guests on the show, Jerome Coleman, one of my fellow Good Ass Sports contributors. Jerome, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's up, man? What's up? Not much, man. How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing good, man. Fresh off that Monday Night Football. So I'm always feeling good. I'm trying to, hold off till Thursday. But, getting this Sports Cypher in, talking a little bit of this football action, which you always, kind of holds me over until then. So I want to kind of jump right into that Monday Night Football game. I mean, we both saw it. History, big night for Drew Brees. Came in there, broke an all-time record. He is now the all-time leader in passing, just passing off Peyton Manning with the historic mark there, doing it in a big way, too, with that touchdown. We're just saying this backstage, but pretty much stopped the entire game just so they could go celebrate this man, Drew Brees. And I also want to take the moment to give some respect to Drew Brees. And before we even dive in, I want to kind of highlight Drew Brees and his story, because I think people forget that when he was with the Chargers, he was a pretty good quarterback, but let's not forget they did draft a quarterback in the top 5 to replace this guy, and they let him walk in free agency. And then he went over to the Saints, where he was kind of looked at. He could have been picked up by a couple teams, but the Saints kind of looked at him. They took a chance on him, and he's always been overlooked and underappreciated in his career until the Saints, and then he just took off from there, and he's been, balling with the best of them ever since then. Always been underlooked, undersized, overlooked, underrated. So I want to just give a shout out to Drew Brees, man, because not only is he an all-time great, and not only is he hard worker, and he's also he's a good message to everyone out there. You know what I mean? If someone tells you can't do something, don't believe it, man. You can do anything you want to do. Size doesn't matter. It's all about the size of that heart in there. Drew Brees is one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen in my time watching this game, and I want to just give a moment to respect for what he did, passing Peyton Manning, one of the all-time greats, and still counting. He's got a whole season ahead of him. Let's see what he continues to do. But big moment for Drew Brees last night. Unfortunately for the Redskins, kind of rained on a possibility of a win there for you. But how you feeling after the Monday night game, Jerome?
Yeah, man, I felt better. It was a long night for Redskin fans for sure. But to piggyback off what you were saying, man, I do want to give a lot of credit to Drew Brees. He's definitely one of the all-time greats, one of my all-time favorites to watch. He's also just a great person on and off the field. If you pay attention to what he does outside of the field, he does a lot of great charity work. He's a great family man. Drew Brees is an all-around class act, and he deserves nothing but praise on today, since considering how he did just pass Peyton Manning. And it sucks that it was against my team. It was painful to watch, but I couldn't think of a more deserving quarterback. And it's funny how you were bringing up his time in San Diego and how they let him go. I mean, they let him go for a pretty good quarterback in Phillip Rivers, but I would propose this question to you. With all this time that's gone by and seeing how well both quarterbacks have played, would you say that the Chargers made a mistake in letting Brees go in hindsight?
Jerome, that is a good question. I was actually thinking about this yesterday. And I was thinking about this in so many ways, because I was on Twitter and I saw someone tweet out, the GOAT emoji. You know what I mean? Because Drew Brees is one of the greatest of all time. Now I started thinking about the whole acronym greatest of all time. There can only be one true GOAT, but it seems like there's a lot of GOATs these days. And it's all due respect, because these guys are all great in their own way. But, I mean, when I look at the player, Drew Brees, and I look at Phillip Rivers, the one thing that really separates them is the championships. You know what I mean? Phillip Rivers is – I've talked about it before. He's a great player. He's probably going to go down as one of the greatest players to never win a championship. He's Donovan McNabb level right now. Drew Brees is up there with all the greats. But I had this argument with somebody else, and it's on a different quarterback, different comparison. So I compared Tom Brady to Aaron Rodgers, and I wondered if the systems were different, what would be the outcome? You know what I mean? I also realized that every great quarterback has a great system. You know what I mean? There's no great quarterback that doesn't have a great system. There may be an exception to the rule, but Drew Brees was fortunate enough to have a coach like Sean Payton, and I think that's the reason they were so successful. So had he stayed in San Diego, I don't know if that would have happened. I think a big part of his success, you got to credit the coaching staff, you got to credit Sean Payton, but you obviously have to give credit to Drew Brees because that heart is incredible, and he's been doing it for a long time. So I don't think it was a mistake more so than it was just part of the process for Drew Brees, and I don't know if he would have reached those marks if he would have stayed in San Diego. I think that step over to New Orleans is really what made him him, and Sean Payton I think had a huge part to do with that. Just like I think right now, looking at Jared Goff over there in LA, I think that system that he's in has a huge play. You know what I mean? I think fit is just as important when it comes to quarterbacks, and Drew Brees not only is a great player, but he embodies the spirit of New Orleans. When they needed someone to look up to in tough times, he was always just, pulling and pushing to be the best player he can and giving them that inspiration, that hope on and off the field. So that's a tough question, but I'll definitely take Drew Brees over Phillip Rivers. No disrespect, but Phillip Rivers, let's give him a little bit more time. He's got a year or two left to possibly win one, but probably not.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. Drew Brees, Sean Payton, the city of New Orleans. You put that into a pot, and you get what you got now, which is greatness. Like I think it was all of that, the timing of it all. It was just all perfect.
Absolutely, man. And he's just the thing about him too is the way he's stood up through time. Because you got to remember too, Phillip Rivers. And we think of him as a veteran quarterback, but let's also think that Drew Brees has been playing this game for 17 years, and he had a couple years on the team before, Phillip even got drafted. So, I mean, what he's been able to do over such a long time and consistency, it's just really been incredible. That's huge numbers that he's put up there in his career. Totaled up 72,000 passing yards and one touchdown short of 500, which puts him in pretty elite company out there with the likes of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, and more. You know what I mean? So big shout out to Drew Brees, man. But now to kind of piggyback and kind of segue in, I want to talk NFC East football a little bit. I know Drew Brees had a big night. He pretty much completed the sweep of the NFC East that was pretty much transpired this weekend. Every NFC East team coming out of Week 5 with a loss, my Eagles included. We lost a tough one to the Minnesota Vikings. You guys lost. The Giants lost a very, very heartbreaking game to the Carolina Panthers. And the Cowboys also lost a big one Sunday night to the Texans. So everyone right back where we started. Washington currently the first-place team in the division. What do you think about the NFC East right now, man? It seems like it's a dogfight, and, it's pretty even. Everyone's losing, so it's plenty of opportunity.
Well, the Redskins are in first place, but this does not, after a loss like last night, it does not feel like a first-place team. The Eagles lost. You guys lost yesterday. The Giants lost, and the Cowboys lost. But out of all the teams that lost on Sunday, I would say the Giants probably impressed me the most. I mean, it really took Graham Gano a 60-some-yard field goal to beat them. I mean, I didn't think he was going to make that when I was watching the game. So I thought the Giants were poised to win their second game. I know they had a lot of drama with the whole Odell interview, throwing Eli under the bus and whatnot. But I was impressed with the Giants, despite the fact that they lost.
Yeah, I thought they were doing pretty well. It's a tough loss for them because, I think they did everything they possibly could to win that game. It's impressive when you got your wide receiver out here throwing touchdown passes. So I was definitely loving what I saw from them. I was a little concerned for Eli Manning heading into the game, really wondering what he was going to be bringing to the table and if he was the proper answer for quarterback for them. And, he not say he proved me wrong, but he proved that he still had something left. We got to admit that this is one of the most talented teams they've had in a very long time. But if you don't have the guy that can get the ball in their hands, it really doesn't mean anything. So, yeah, I was impressed with what I saw, and I'm a little concerned. I'm going to be honest. I'm a little concerned watching them play and thinking about what my Eagles are going through. So right now the Eagles are going through, I'd say, plenty of problems across the board. If you checked out the article I wrote on the website, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's plenty of that to go around for the Philadelphia Eagles. Good news is Carson Wentz is healthy. He's getting warmed up a little bit. He's playing a little bit better game by game. The bad news is These guys can't protect him to save his life. He's getting hit way too much. If they want him to play 17 games this season, they're going to need to get that together. Now, the biggest concern for me really is that secondary. Jalen Mills in the Philadelphia sports, he's pretty much Philadelphia sports fans. They always have one guy that they're going to be really, really bringing it hard on. And right now, it's Jalen Mills. Once upon a time, it was Nelson Aguilar. He broke that mold and, showed fans what he had. But right now, it's Jalen Mills. Jalen Mills being compared to burnt toast at the moment on Philadelphia Twitter. If you check it out on Twitter, you'll see plenty of memes about him going around. Now, I think I have a little more respect for Jalen Mills because he played a big, big part in our run last year. But it's clear to see that he has some issues, particularly guarding against that double move. He has been notoriously bad against the double move, and he's broken a couple big plays, most notably to Adam Theilen. And also, he's done it a number of weeks, but it's a big question mark there because he actually was drafted as a safety, and now he's playing the corner position. And in terms of speed, I mean, let's be realistic, man. This guy ran like a 4.8. He doesn't really have the elite speed to be guarding these kind of receivers, and I think that's the problem. I also wonder what's going on in Jim Shorts' mind because you got a former safety, and then you have the injury to Rodney McLeod at safety, and you choose to start a corner, rookie Avonte Maddox, who's never played the position before, instead of starting a guy that used to play safety in college. And it kind of has to be wondering, Jim Shorts, if anybody knows the defense and knows his personnel, it's him. So I'm wondering what kind of weaknesses is he trying to mask? Because I'm very confused by the defensive lineup right there, and it's definitely a liability right now. You're going into the matchup on Thursday night against the Giants. Odell Beckham, one of the highest paid top flight receivers in the NFL. And you have to wonder, man, if these guys breaking double moves, Adam Thielen going to break you, what Odell Beckham going to do to you? So I'm a little worried about that, to be completely honest. But I don't want to say it's a must-win game, but it is definitely a pivotal game in the NFC East if the Giants could come in there. And it's actually at home for the Giants. So that's going to be a matchup to watch. Do you think the Giants could possibly pull an upset there?
This Thursday night game is going to be huge for every NFC East team. I mean, if the Eagles were to lose, that would put you guys down to 2-4 with the Giants, leaving the division even more wide open. If Philly finds a way to win, it kind of buries the Giants. I would say this is more of a must-win for the Giants, especially considering that they just played well and lost. They definitely want to keep that momentum going. I think they'll come out firing against Philly, but the Giants' offensive line is just trash to me, and the Eagles' defensive line is still a strength, even if the secondary is playing bad. To talk about the Jalen Mills thing, Jalen Mills did have a strong playoff run, but he's never really had a track record of being a great corner or like a shutdown corner you can rely on consistently. Once Patrick Robinson left, man, I had questions about the Eagles secondary, and it's starting to rear its head a little bit. But my take on Philly is y'all are going to go as Carson Wentz goes. The healthier Carson gets, the better the whole team will play. He'll give energy and life. I think a couple of those guys are going through a Super Bowl hangover. The offensive line they haven't looked like how they looked last year, and I don't think all of a sudden they just can't play. I think it's just tough coming back, being the Super Bowl champs. Everybody's giving you their best shot and whatnot. And then I do want to talk about Dallas a little bit. I don't have really anything nice to say about Dallas. I just want to talk about their coach for a second here. And I'm not trying to sound like a Dallas hater. Ezekiel Elliott, until Dallas starts just handing Ezekiel Elliott the ball pretty much nonstop, I don't understand what they're trying to do. There's this whole thing where Dak Prescott was supposedly a really good quarterback. I guess they forgot that they drafted him in the 4th round. He's a 4th-round quarterback, and he plays like it. If you put a bunch of talent around him, he'll probably look like a 2nd-round quarterback. But without all those number 1 receivers or a number 1 tight end and Jason Witten, he looks like a 4th-round quarterback. But despite all that, none of that is the reason they lost to the Texans. The reason they lost to the Texans is because Coach Jason Garrett has no guts. No guts. How do you not go for it on 4th and 1? You have Ezekiel Elliott. And I know they're missing Travis Frederick. I know the line's beat up. It's not the same dominant offensive line or whatever. But I just can't figure out how in the world you don't go for it on 4th and 1 in your territory in overtime. Like, what were you thinking when you were watching that?
First thing I was thinking was, wow, he must have no trust in his team right now. That's what I thought. I think those kind of calls come down to trust. If you trust your team, you go for it. And if you trust the team and they go for it and they get it, not only do you get paid off by getting the play, but you also get a big spike in your confidence. I love when Doug Peterson goes for it on fourth down. I love that about him, and he goes for it because he has faith in his players. What that tells me is that coach doesn't have any faith in his players, and it's a shame because it's like you said, it's a 4th and 1. You have what's supposed to be the most dominant offensive line in the NFL, and you have one of the most dominant power runners in the NFL. You would think that going for it right there would be a no-brainer. Instead, they choose to punt it, end up losing the game, shortly after. But, that's just more Dallas Cowboys stuff, man. It just seems like, as they say, they find a way to lose the game, and they surely did that on Sunday night. But it is disappointing, and I have to wonder, and you posed 2 great points there. One is about Dak Prescott. I think that franchise, they tend to settle at quarterback very frequently. Tony Romo wasn't a high draft pick by any means. Now, let's give some respect to Tony Romo. As much as he got a lot of flack when he was playing, Tony Romo actually was a pretty good pro. Tony Romo was not a highly recruited. He was actually undrafted coming out of Eastern Illinois. And, he found his way into that starting spot. Once he was there, Dallas tends to be very loyal to who they have at quarterback. They've also been very loyal to that head coach. Jason Garrett, in my opinion, he is probably one of the worst head coaches still that has held on to his job. He should have been fired probably several seasons ago. That kind of mediocrity would not fly in pretty much any other city. If he did that in Philadelphia, these fans would have been on his ass. You know what I mean? The same thing in Washington or any other city. So I think the leash has to be getting very short now with the head coach over there. I don't know. I think Dak Prescott, I think we're going to and I said this before the season started, I think we're really going to see what he's made of. If he is going to be a great quarterback, he's going to have to prove it this season. And so far, he's looked, like a 4th-round pick. You know what I mean? So I think they'd be wise to maybe invest in the future and another quarterback potentially, just to have something in there because, you're putting all your marbles on a 4th-round pick and a quarterback that hasn't really won you any game. I mean, a head coach that hasn't really won you any games. Now you take away all the weapons and you're like, all right, Dak, it's all you. And he's showing people, why, he was a 4th-round pick. And it makes me laugh because I remember when he first was a rookie and people were saying he was better than Carson Wentz. And, now we can see a little bit of struggles on that side. But, it's a shame what Dallas is going through, but I'm really not surprised. I would expect them to be doing a little bit better, but, it's a wide-open division. I can't really say too much because they're 2-3, just like pretty much everyone else right now. So, but, I definitely think Dak Prescott.
Very disappointing weekend for the NFC East. The Redskins had an opportunity to kind of take the lead here. Looking ahead, Dallas has Jacksonville next week. You guys are going to beat up Giants and Philly, going to beat up on each other on Thursday. So, Washington had an opportunity, so I'm very disappointed in the Redskins after that embarrassing national TV loss. But I would have to say moving forward, man, Philly Carson is going to get it together. I would say Philly's probably still the favorites.
Yeah. I have to say, looking at Washington, I think that they're going to be a pretty good team, but I'd like to see – I think you guys are still unproven to an extent. First game against the Cardinals, easy win. That game against the Redskins – the Redskins against the Packers, that was a good win, but, a little hobbled up with Aaron Rodgers. The Saints game was a little bit of a test. And I think Alex Smith, I think he could have did a little bit more, but, that was his moment to lose, unfortunately. But let's see what you guys can do against the Panthers. If you guys can pull a win against the Panthers, I think that's a very even matchup, and I think that'll tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from the Redskins moving forward the rest of the season. And then you guys actually have 2 divisional matchups with the Cowboys and the Giants right after that, back-to-back weeks in October, closing out the month. So I'm definitely interested to see how that's going to go. But, the NFC East definitely wide open right now. But I would have to agree with you. As bad as my team has looked, I think the Eagles are still the class of the NFC East. But I do see the Washington Redskins in the mix. And I do see a talented team in the New York Giants that just can't get it together. And then you got to give some respect to the Cowboys too. So I think it's a wide open division, and I think it's really, if you're in the NFC East right now, you better come into work early, trying to get some work in, because this division is yet to be won, and it's pretty much wide open for anyone that really wants to put in the work and go out there and get it.
I would agree 100%. I want to say that the way that everyone looks, man, I want to say the Redskins don't deserve it. I want to say the Giants aren't good enough, but they definitely have the talent. And I want to say that Dallas is dead in the water, but, I mean, the way the records are looking, Dallas has every opportunity to still win this division. So it's definitely wide open.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough stretch. I mean, the Eagles, they play the Giants this week on a short week. Also play the Panthers the following week, so the Panthers are definitely we're gonna measure up against the Panthers, both the Redskins and the Eagles. We'll see how that pays out. Then the Jaguars, and then the Cowboys, Saints, Giants, and their schedule goes on. And it doesn't really seem to get much easier. Giants would be the easiest game, and as you know, an NFC East game is never really an easy game. Anything could really happen with those.
Agreed.
But definitely, man. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited for the rest of the season. I want to throw a little bit of a rumor out there. I'm just connecting the dots, so, forgive me. I see Fletcher Cox restructured his deal, clearing up about $6.5 million in cap space for the Eagles. Big injury this season. We just found out yesterday, Jay Ajayi, starting running back for the Eagles, will be out for the remainder of the year. Tore his ACL in the game against the Vikings. Actually tore his ACL, went back in the game, continued playing, then fumbled the ball, but clearly hampered by that injury. He's out for the rest of the season, leaving the Eagles very thin at the running back position. Right now, Wendell Smallwood looking like the lead back between him and Corey Clement and Darren Sproles. I don't know if that's enough to get us through the season, and I definitely have to wonder. I did put this out there last week. I got to wonder if they're calling Pittsburgh Steelers about Le'Veon Bell. $6.5 million, a little extra cap space. That clears up about $12 million for next season. Maybe a Le'Veon Eagles marriage. What do you think?
Man, I actually can see that coming, man. And when we get into our top performers, I actually mentioned a little something about that. But I could see that going, man, because the Steelers have been looking good. James Conner's been playing well. I think that makes it a little bit easier for them to move on. It's hard to move on from a talent like Le'Veon Bell. It's hard to, especially if you look at John Gruden and the Raiders and him trading away Khalil Mack. You don't want to be the guy that trades away the once-in-a-generation type player, the all-time great player. So I think it's hard to just trade away Le'Veon Bell, but when you got James Conner performing like he did, I think that makes it a little bit easier to let go of someone like Le'Veon Bell, knowing that you have a younger player coming up. But I don't want to see Le'Veon Bell in the Eagles uniform, especially considering that we still got y'all twice this season. I already think the Eagles still have the advantage in the NFC East, and I think Le'Veon coming from Pittsburgh to Philly would pretty much solidify that. But you never know, man. I could see it happening. I could definitely see Pittsburgh moving on. I guess what it's going to come down to is how much Pittsburgh believes in James Conner and how much they think that Le'Veon Bell is their key piece to winning a championship this year.
We shall see. Le'Veon expected to report to Steelers by week 7, so after next week he should be back. Another name I'm going to throw out there, I also heard inquiries for the Eagles interested in David Johnson of the Arizona Cardinals. These are a few names out here. We'll see what ends up happening, but we do have until week 8 for the NFL trade deadline. Howie Roseman, he's looking like he's retooling, shuffling up the deck a little bit, and maybe expect a move there. For Eagles fans, it's in Howie we trust, hoping that we can make a move and, propel us to the next level, just like he did last season when he picked up Jay Ajayi mid-season. But I'm definitely excited. We'll be keeping an eye on that as things play on. But without further ado, let's jump into our good-ass sports performers of the week. Jerome, I'll lead off with my top 5 because I know you have somebody in your top 5 that I want to cap off, and I'm going to let you finish. I'm going to do yours second. Let me jump into mine real quick. One guy I want to highlight, big-time underrated player, Adam Theilen. Talk about consistency. That's my number one good-ass sports performance of the week. on my side. Adam Theilen, 7 receptions, 116 yards, and the touchdown. Pretty solid game. You know, what I love about Adam Theilen is where he comes from. Undrafted player. He's actually from Minnesota, undrafted, walked on, basically made the team, and now he's continually been a problem for them. Continually getting those 100-yard games. That's 5 straight 100-yard games for Adam Theilen. Talk about consistency. Talk about underrated. Just like I said with Drew Brees, got to give some credit to Adam Theilen for what he's doing. Number 2 on my list, I got what I think is probably, I got to admit, Saquon Barkley. He has shown some promise. Also, he's consecutively, every game he's been with the Giants, 100 yards from scrimmage. Again, 100 yards from scrimmage again this Sunday. He had 48 yards on the ground. Also had 81 receiving yards on 4 receptions, and that big touchdown from Odell Beckham. I got to give it to Saquon Barkley. One moment of the game, I'm not sure if you saw it, but there was a big play where he was rushing out of the backfield, and he went head-to-head with Julius Peppers. I love this moment. These are moments I wish I could just grab on film because that's really what the NFL is all about. You got that veteran player, Julius Peppers. We all know he's been around for years. And Saquon Barkley, the young bad back that's coming in, and he's, you know, we seen the workout videos. That boy's strong as hell. He coming across that line, and Julius Peppers, he ran into him, and it was like a train hitting a brick wall. It was incredible. So Julius Peppers just grabs him just by the neck of his jersey, and he would not let go of this man. And Saquon Barkley, to his defense, he would not go down either. So it was pretty much a standstill of a young stud running back and an old, you know, not I want to say old, but a very well-respected, veteran pass rusher. And Julius Peppers, he literally said to him, he said, "No, you're not going nowhere, buddy." And it was just a good moment right there because Saquon also would not come down to his feet. The refs had to blow the whistle because these two guys, clearly just two trucks that just ran into each other and nothing there. But, yeah, Saquon Barkley, he's going to be a problem for years to come. I'm a little worried about him. We'll see.
Just imagine if the Giants had an offensive line for that man. Like, Saquon has been doing extremely well despite that poor offensive line.
Yeah, he has. I mean, the thing about Saquon that's impressive is exactly what he does without an offensive line and the fact that he breaks tackles the way he does. Because he'll be in the backfield for a loss, realistically, and he'll break a few tackles, and all of a sudden he'll find that space, and once he goes, he goes. He's got the acceleration, the strength to break the tackles. He looks like an all-around back. I got to say, legendary type talent, you know, Barry Sanders-like almost. But definitely we'll see what he does next week against the Eagles. Number 3 on my list, I got to say that when I watched that Sunday game against the Cowboys, Cowboys-Texans, I thought the best player in that game was DeAndre Hopkins. I liked what he was doing out there. He showed that he was the best player in the game. He finished the game with 150 yards receiving, 9 receiving receptions, rather. Big game for the Texans, finally getting a dub. I like what I saw from them, looking like they're starting to turn the page and get back on track. I like what I saw from DeAndre Hopkins. One more guy I want to throw out there, kind of an under-the-radar guy, definitely, but he's always been a performer. So I got to mention this guy out here, Isaiah Crowell. Not exactly one of your top draft picks in fantasy football, but somehow he finds himself on the top of the list every week. 15 rushes, 219 yards, touchdown. That's in a committee system over there with the Jets, so I got to give some credit to Isaiah Crowell for a big game. And then the last guy I want to shout out there, shout out to the defense. I got to give a shout-out to Buda Baker. 16 tackles total for the Cardinals. Huge game. 16 tackles. I mean, he's pretty much all over the field. He's pretty much a one-man defense out there, and they ended up with the win too. So I got to give them out there. And then one more person I want to mention too, a little love for the Cowboys. Honorable mention. He didn't make the top 5. Maybe one week he will. But honorable mention to Leighton Vander Esch, first-round pick for the Cowboys, who they're saying is a Sean Lee clone. And pretty accurate. This guy is flying around the field just like Sean Lee. He's got tons of energy out there, and he looks like he'll be a long-time starter for the Cowboys for years to come.
Yeah, that's a solid top 5, man. I like the honorable mention too. He balled in that Texans game, and so did Buda Baker, man. I like how you include the defensive players. Defensive guys got to get some love. I didn't do that this week, but I'll try to get somebody in there next week. For me, my top 5 this week, number 5, I'm going to start off with Antonio Brown. He had 2 touchdown catches, 6 receptions, 101 yards. He said the Wi-Fi connection, or him and Big Ben have a connection like Wi-Fi, and that it was strong this past Sunday. So I'm sure the Steelers fans are hoping that Wi-Fi signal stays up. Number 4 for my top performers, I'm going to go with Todd Gurley. The man had 26 total touches and 113 yards with 3 touchdowns. That's the hat trick for touchdowns. Personally, I think Todd Gurley is the best running back in football. I know you got Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas on the come up, but there's nothing that Todd Gurley can't do. He can run between the tackles. He can catch the ball. He can find up a receiver. He's the younger Le'Veon Bell. That's why he got his money with no questions asked to it. Number 3 on my list, I'm actually going to go with James Conner from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this is why I was saying that the possibility of Le'Veon to Philly is a strong possibility. Conner had 25 total touches, 185 yards. I believe he ran it 21 times and caught 4 balls for 75 yards, added 2 touchdowns. I know Le'Veon Bell does that almost every game, probably does a little bit more than that, but that is pretty damn good. It's pretty solid, and I don't think you necessarily need Le'Veon Bell if Conner can give you that. So just to jump down to my number 2 on my list, OBJ, man. Some people on Twitter might think I'm an OBJ hater. Some of my friends that know me might think I'm an OBJ hater. I'm always kind of the guy who, when Odell's doing some knucklehead stuff, get on him. Show him some love here, man, because I cannot lie. I was impressed as hell watching him play this past Sunday against the Panthers. 8 catches, 131 yards, a touchdown, despite all the drama, despite all the locker room supposedly being upset with him for his interview and all that. And, I mean, as far as his interview goes and him throwing Eli under the bus, I'm okay with him saying what he said about Eli for the simple fact that he threw a 57-yard bomb to Saquon Barkley, and I haven't seen Eli Manning do that yet this season. I don't think Eli Manning's throwing a pass longer than 40 yards. So Odell calls out his quarterback, goes out on the field, and then throws a touchdown pass. So you go, Odell Beckham. You deserve to be on this list today, and you deserve to get praise for your performance and not be trash-talked for your interview. So I'm going to go ahead and show Odell some love today. And then my number one top performer, I'm going to have to go with Drew Brees. Drew Brees was not on my list last night. It took me till this morning to come to my senses and say, you know what, this man balled out last night. Do I think that the Redskins kind of laid an egg and didn't give him much competition? Yes. But that doesn't change the fact that my man had 3 touchdowns, over 300 yards, and he only let 3 balls hit the ground. He was 26 for 29. He was damn near perfect in this game. Drew Brees is obviously on his way to Canton, obviously going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer, all-time passing leader. And, I mean, yeah, on a day like today, there's no hate for a man like Drew Brees. So I got him at number 1 for my top performer of the week.
All respect to that list. If you didn't have him on your top 5, he was going to be number 1 on my list. So I'm glad you had him on there. Also, good to see my man Mark Ingram back in the action. 2 touchdowns last night. Big fantasy football performance, taking a little bit of the shine away from Alvin Kamara. They're looking like they're primed up and ready to go. Big performance from the Saints defense. We're going to be watching them as a potential playoff threat coming out of the NFC. But yeah, great top 5 on both sides, man. Great performances right here in Week 5. Week 6 is shortly upon us, so we'll be ready with some Week 6 action. We'll be talking about that as it progresses. We're going to keep an eye on all of these teams in the NFC East, and we're going to have a big treat this Thursday with a beautiful Thursday night matchup, NFC East. You got the Eagles headed up the Turnpike to New York to play the New York Giants. I'm really excited about that game. As you'll see, it's going to be a pivotal matchup for both teams, with a lot on the line for every team in the NFC East, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Yeah, man, again, Jerome, thanks for coming on today. As always, we always have a good time having you on here Tuesday mornings. This is pretty much our regular thing now. Shout out to everybody out there listening. Thanks for listening to us today. Be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. That's Good Ass Sports Network. Also, if you're on the gram, Twitter, follow us at Good Ass Sports. One more mention I want to mention. Go ahead and check out the Twitter for the podcast. That's at Gas Sports Cypher on Twitter. We are now on there posting all of our episodes right there. And also, be sure to tune into our website. That's goodassports.com. Again, keeping you up to date with all the latest content in the NFL, NBA, boxing, and everything pretty much that you need to see. Again, stay tuned. We are Sports for the Culture.